Good morning, friends. How you doing today? Today is the day. It is seed starting day for the spring flower garden. Welcome. We've got a whole bunch of new friends who've subscribed recently, so welcome to everyone. Thanks so much for coming back. Thank you for subscribing. My name is Heather Marano. I am a flower farmer and gardener in Zone 9B in Northern California, the San Francisco Bay Area. And I have a small garden here at my house where I grow vegetables for the family and raise chickens and bees. And then I have a flower farm, a rental space that I grow flowers for my CSA, wedding work, wholesale, etc. So today is seed starting day. It is a big one. Because of my zone, and if you live in zones kind of like 6 and up, you can even get away with this in zones 5 and up with a lot of frost protection. But if you're going to be growing spring flowers, annuals, you can start your spring flowers in the fall and overwinter them in the ground. And by doing that, you give them a head start and you'll get blooms much sooner. Plus, it makes your spring a lot less crazy and hectic. So that's what I do. I don't generally tend to need a whole lot of frost protection. At my house here, we are in kind of a little dip with hills surrounding us. And so we actually do go down into temperatures that are more like zone 8. But out at the flower farm, which is just 2 miles down the road, those temperatures don't get that cold. I think maybe 29, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, but for the most part, it stays above freezing for the whole winter. And these flowers, these cold hardy annuals, can handle even snow, and frost. So they're really good ones to grow if you want wonderful spring flowers. And so I've gotten a lot of requests from folks to show the whole process. How do I grow? How do I start the seeds? I happen to use soil blocking as my seed starting method for the flowers. When it comes to doing small stuff for the garden, I generally start in 6-packs because I'm not growing hundreds of the same type of thing in my front garden. So I'll generally start garden seeds, like vegetable seeds, in 6-packs. I use these 6-packs that I got from Epic Gardening. They're super heavy duty, very strong plastic that will last for probably decades. That's the only way I like to invest in plastic, is the heavy duty stuff that's going to last for a really long time. The cheap stuff just falls apart and basically becomes single use and then ends up in the landfill. And I'm really trying to avoid that. So this is what I start my vegetable seedlings in, and I just use a seed starting mix. Whatever your seed starting mix is available near you. I try to do peat free because that's better for the environment, but it's really hard to find peat free seed starting mixes. And so for the vegetable garden, I use whatever I can find. But for the flower farm, I create soil blocks, and you need a special kind of mix for that because the soil blocks don't have anything to hold them together. It's just the soil itself. And so they need to be able to hold together well. So I have a whole bunch of ingredients that I put together, and I'll share that with you today. It's not a science. Lots of people have soil block recipes online that you can look up. And everybody's is slightly different as long as your seeds. So when you're starting seeds, they generally don't need a whole lot of nutrition. They just need a good medium to start in, something that's very smooth and fine-grained, nothing chunky, because you want that seed to soil contact. And so you can even get a bag of potting soil and screen it through a kind of a fine mesh, and you'll get a beautiful, very fine substrate that's perfect for starting seeds. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Now, for soil blocking, I will show you the tools that I have that I'm using, and all the trays and things that I use. This has upgraded over the years, so I'll show you where I started and where we're at now. First, I gotta tell you, the weather is absolutely beautiful. We've had a heat wave of almost a week with temperatures close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit every day. All the vegetable seedlings that I started that were looking so beautiful in here, completely fried. It just got too hot in the greenhouse. But today our high is 68 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not going to stay that way. We're going to go back up into the low to mid 80s, which is hot, but it's not super hot. And so that's really important because these cold hardy annuals need warm temperatures to germinate, but cool temperatures to grow. So it's a difficult balance. And this week is critical for me. This is week 36 in the agricultural calendar. This is when I start all the seeds for the flower farm because they need to go into the ground by the first week of October out at the farm, so they have enough time to put on enough growth before the frost sets in, and then they just kind of stay dormant for the whole winter until it starts to warm up, and then they put on more growth. So it's really a critical window. And if this week was going to be more hot temperatures, I was going to have to get creative on where I was going to put my seeds because they probably wouldn't even germinate out here. It would be too hot. But looks like for the next 7 to 10 days, which is kind of the germination window, we're going to be in the mid 70s to low 80s. And I keep the door open and all the vents open in here, and it's shaded. We're actually under trees in this greenhouse. So hopefully it won't be too bad and they'll germinate just fine like they always do. Okay, so to start, I have a number of tools that I use for the soil blocking. The first one, and this is the one I started with and I still use this one. This is a 20 cell soil block. This one is, I think it's 3/4 of an inch. So there's 20 cells here, and when you pack it full of soil and then you squeeze it out, I'll show you how it works. You'll get a block of 20 cubes that have little divots in it, and that's where you place your seeds. So I use these on my trays. And then if I'm going to do slightly bigger seeds, or I know that those seedlings are going to stay in the soil block a little bit longer, then I use this one. They're slightly bigger, and this is 72 cells. Now I also have a 2-inch blocker, but I rarely ever use this one. It's really big. It takes a lot of soil. There's actually more soil in one of these than there is in a 6-pack cell. So it makes more sense to just use the 6-packs. Now these are good for, let's say you start in the summertime or in early spring. I start my tomato seedlings in these. They're not gonna last very long in these, right? Because tomato seedlings get big. So I can actually take one of these little blocks and place it inside. Do you see that? That's a divot. It's the same size as the small blocker. So it'll make a divot in this big block, soil block, and I can place that little one right inside, and then the tomato can continue to grow. But again, it uses a lot of soil. So what I have started to do instead is I just pot up all of those little soil blocks for tomatoes, peppers, everything into these. These are like 3.5-inch pots. These are from Farmer's Friend. Again, super strong plastic that will last a long time. And I've had these for years. They haven't even faded in color. And they come in lots of fun colors. So if you like that. When I first started out, I took Lisa Mason Ziegler's Cool Flowers course online. I recommend it highly. So much information. You can also buy her book, Cool Flowers. That will help you get started. And it's got a dictionary in the back of all the cool flowers that you can start, and what zones, how far down you can go, and then whether or not you'll need protection and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's how I got started. And she recommended using trays like this. This is a styrofoam. It's like what you get like chicken or meat from the grocery store in. And this particular size, I can fit 3 of these 20 cell soil blocks. So I'll get 60 seedlings on this little tray. This is the magic of soil blocking. If I was going to do 60 of these, they would take up a huge amount of space. So this is what I started on. And occasionally, if I'm only going to do 60 of a certain plant, I'll still use these because it's easy to hydrate. After that, I also, in addition to those, I found these on Amazon years ago. This also holds 60 seedlings. And then a couple years ago, I got from the Gardener's Workshop online, this tray, I can't remember how many it holds in the 20, but it does hold an entire 72 seedlings in the bigger soil blocker size. When I'm starting a lot of a specific flower or even bunches of, I will use this next setup. These trays are all from Farmer's Friend. Again, you're going to pay more for this, but they're going to last you for probably decades, especially if you keep them out of the sun. So this is a perforated tray. You can see me through it. And below it is a solid tray. So I put the soil blocks in this perforated tray, and that makes it really easy to water, because then what I do is I just fill a tray with water and I dip the tray with the soil blocks into that water. They get bottom watered, and it takes minutes, literally, to do an entire shelf, thousands of seedlings. It's really great. Plus, then you don't have to worry about any sitting water left, because the tray that has the water in it can get dumped out. So that's how I start the majority of my flower seedlings. Now in this, if I use the 20 blocker, I can fit 240 seedlings in one of these. If I use the 72 blocker, then I can only fit 144. But still, that's a lot of seedlings in a tiny space, which is great, because coming into the fall, to start all these seeds, I have my map that I made in Seed Time, and I know when I'm starting, how many I need to start based on that map. And so let's go over that now so you'll know. I've said in previous videos that after I'm going into my 5th year of flower farming. I have finally narrowed down my crop list of things that are like, these are the things I'm growing from now on. That's either because they perform best for me, or it's what the market is really wanting and things that I like, but nobody really wants. I'm not going to bother using space to grow those things. So it's taken me 4 years, but I finally figured it out. And so what we've got is, and I'll try to put pictures on the screen, because these are most of these seeds are from Johnny's and they don't have photos. So today and tomorrow, because it's going to take more than a couple days to do this, we're starting 120 seeds, 120 plants of Amimagus. This is like false Queen Anne's lace. It's amazing for bouquet work because it's so airy and light, and it's a wonderful filler, a must-have. If you grow mostly just focal flowers, you're going to have really lacking bouquets. You need those secondary filler flowers as well as the greenery in order to fill everything out and make it look complete. So that's one of the things that helped me determine what I was going to keep and what I was not going to keep. I laid it out by season, spring, summer, fall. And I said, okay, how many greenery, how many focal flowers, how many secondary, and I filled out the crops I wanted to keep. So that's that. What we are also growing is ranunculus and tulips and daffodils. All of those obviously aren't started from seed. The daffodils are already here in this garden. They've been here for years, and I just harvest on them when they come up in the spring. The tulips we plant annually and treat them as annuals. Okay, so that's Amimagus. This is all going stuff out of the farm. The next is, and there's a photo of this, Bells of Ireland. Now these I've only successfully grown for the first time this year. In the past I've tried and just haven't been successful. These really must be direct sown. They do not like to be transplanted, and so timing for direct sowing is really important, because again, they won't germinate well if the soil is too hot, and you want them to get big enough to go through the winter so they can, be established, so that you have nice blooms in the spring. So these are going to be sown out at the farm. I already have on the map where they're going to go. We have 85 of these plants going in. Greenery that we're going to be sowing, and these are also direct sown, so I'm not going to be putting these in soil blocks. This is Bupleurum, another beautiful filler, really important filler, and it's hard in the spring to get a lot of greenery, which sounds crazy, but we have so many flowers, but it's hard to get good greenery for your bouquets, and so I end up usually scavenging from my own garden evergreen stuff, and I have lots of Dusty Miller that I can use, but I want to have these out of the farm. Now, new to me this year, I have been growing Campanula in my home garden, in the cottage garden, but now I'm going to grow it as a cut crop. So I have two varieties that I'm going to be doing, and I only have one here in my hand. I had to order more of another one. But Champion Lavender, this is from Johnny's. And then I'm going to be growing a dark rose pink. I love the white campanula, but white flowers are really challenging when they're big. Like white flowers are great when they're little tiny clusters of flowers, but the big ones tend to get damaged by insects and they just look awful. So it's really hard to grow really pretty white flowers unless you have them in a contained space where you can control the pest population. All right, so these are getting sown. Another flower that's going out, this is a crucial flower. The first time I've ever grown it was this year, and I didn't know if I was going to like it or not, but I loved it. I grew it in blue and in pink. This is Cynoglossum, also known as Chinese forget-me-not. So I have here blue showers. This is from Floret. This is an older seed, but we're doing 88 of these, the blue showers variety. And then in the spring, when I start the second spring succession at the other part of the farm, we're going to put the Mystery Rose color out there, which is the one that I grew this early summer. Beautiful, wonderful filler, very prolific. So I will definitely always grow these. All right, and then my favorite, these are great in soil blocks, and these do have a photo. This is Dara Flowering Carrot or Chocolate Lace Flower. Gorgeous colors, beautiful flowers, excellent filler, and that color just can't be beat. All right, and we're going to be starting 81 of those. So I have lots of seeds for that. Then lots and lots of seeds for Feverfew. And I have a bunch of varieties. I've got Vegmo Sunnyball, Virgo, and Magic Single. Now, if you were here with me early this spring, like February timeframe, you will remember that almost all, I think all but 6 of my Feverfew plants were destroyed by gophers. And so I am planting 137 of these. Now I know some of them are going to get destroyed by gophers. I'm going to be doing my best to stay on top of the gopher population out there now that I know how it works. But the more I plant, the more I can afford to lose. Because one single Feverfew plant actually produces a whole lot of stems. It's really, really productive. But I want this crop for as much of the season as possible. And I'll be starting a second succession that will go in the ground in the spring for later harvest. All right, so that's Feverfew. And then the other thing I'm starting is Orlea, another beautiful white frilly lace cap filler flower. Again, a lot of them got eaten last time, and so I have 78 going in the ground this time. Now come the fun ones. So I have a whole bunch of snapdragons here. Some of them are early, some of them are middle, and some of them are late season. So I should have a long succession of snaps to cut from. Now I'm only doing 40 of each variety. So that's 2 of the 20 size soil blockers each of these varieties. The first one is Potomac Berry Blend. Then we have Monaco Orange, Costa Deep Rose, Madame Butterfly Mix, Madame Butterfly Cherry Bronze, Opus Yellow, and Avignon Pink. That's lots of colors, lots of variety, and I think, you know, snapdragons are wonderful, and I can generally get 2 flushes out of them, and since there'll be 3 different classes over the time period of spring into early summer, we should get lots of snaps as long as they survive. Status. This one is always going to make the list. I have so much dried status, but it is such a wonderful flower. It's very easy to grow. And this year, after doing this for many, many years and always discovering that the birds really love early status plants, they have a little rosette of green and they just get pecked apart till there's no leaves left. So this year I'm going to protect them with netting, insect netting, like we did out front for the vegetables. And I think that will work great because I'm happy for the birds to eat other things on the farm. I actually am going to be putting out bird feeders because all the flower farmers I know, when they do that, the birds come to the feeders and they actually leave their crops alone. So that's what I'm maybe doing this year. Anyway, we are growing a Johnny's Pastel Mix, and then this one is a Cotton Candy Blend. That's from Botanical Interest. I'm putting in 40 Doesn't sound like much, but individual statice plants produce so many stems over a course of a whole year. I plant them in October and I'm still harvesting on them now, almost a year later. So these, critical for bouquets. All right, now we're moving into straw flower. I'm doing 20 each of these varieties. Again, absolutely gorgeous flower, wonderful dried and fresh, and not a lot bothers it. If they can get past the first like 6 inches of their life, they pretty much just hang out and they do great. And so this is one that goes in the ground because the gophers just don't seem to like them, which is good. All right, so I've got a whole bunch of colors here. We've got golden yellow, vintage white, which is really pretty. It's white with a slight pinkish tinge to it. King size orange, apricot peach mix, copper red, and silvery rose. All right, so that's the seeds. What about the soil blocking mix? Okay, so in my bucket here, this is just a trug, garden trug. I've got a mixture of compost that I bought at the store, organic compost that I bought at the store, compost from my own garden, and a little bit of seed starting mix, which has a little bit of perlite in it, which you'll see these little perlite bumps coming up, and it also has a little bit of sphagnum moss in it, which will help hold things together. Now you can try coconut coir as your peat substitute in your blocking mix, but I have found that it is very stringy and tends to not do as well as holding the blocks together. Also, there's also a number of environmental problems associated with coconut coir as well, in terms of salinity of water, the amount of water needed to rinse the saline from the coconut coir. It's really hard to find a good substitute. But I find that compost itself, really good compost, tends to hold together. Now this mix has quite a few pieces that might cause problems in the soil block. So I generally will sift it first. Here's my sifter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour this soil into this sifter and set it up in a new bucket so that I can get some of those bigger chunks out and make sure that this is a nice fluffy material that doesn't have a lot of sticks and things in it. Okay, much better. There's still a few chunks in here, but I hope you can see that it is much lighter and fluffier. Hardly any stems or sticks. You could probably see how much was gathered in those screens. By the way, I got that screen from Gardener Supply, and it comes with 3 different size screens that you can screw in there, so it's wonderful. Definitely investment worth having. All right, so to this compost mix, I'm gonna add a few things. One, this is worm castings, dried worm castings. I do have a worm bin, but I will be honest, I completely neglected it this year, and I'm sure they're all dead. I haven't even checked on them. And there's probably plenty of worm compost to harvest in there, but I haven't. And that will just go towards making compost tea, worm compost tea, to fertilize these seedlings once they get in the ground. So yeah, I was a bad steward of the worms. Okay, next thing, so that was dried worm castings. If you have fresh worm castings, that's even better. Next thing I'm gonna add, and this is, you don't have to get this brand, there's lots of mycorrhizal fungi brands out there. This just happens to be the one I have. This one also has biochar and some more worm castings in it. But mycorrhizal fungi helps with root development and also helps jumpstart the mycorrhizal network that already exists in the ground. So when you put your transplants in, they already have a jump start, and there's quicker kind of communication between the species, and you get a better happier ecosystem underground. Dusty. Okay. The final thing I'm going to add is something called green sand. This happens to be the brand I have. You can get whatever you can get. This is a sedimentary, pulverized sedimentary rock, basically. So it's got sand, some clay, and the green stuff is sea minerals. That's what gives it its color. And what this does is it helps the plants grow really good root systems. It aerates the soil, and it allows more oxygen to get to the roots. So, you know, is this critical in soil blocking mix? No, but it's helpful. I figure if we're gonna be starting seedlings, we might as well give them the best start possible. All right, so there's our mix. Now I've made a lot of it, and it can just sit like this for months. It's totally fine. To make the blocks, we're gonna have to saturate some of it really well in order to make good blocks. So we'll do that next. Okay, so to make these blocks, dump some of our mix into my pan. And now I'm gonna saturate this soil. And when I say saturate, I mean get it really wet. First of all, it's gonna be a little bit hydrophobic because it's dry. So it's gonna take some mixing. Now I'm using rainwater here that I collected from our rainy season, which was months ago, in my rain barrel. I collected off of the roof of the greenhouse. It's a 65-gallon rain barrel. And I use that all year long to water seedlings in the greenhouse. The reason, if you have access to rainwater, that's really the best to use. And the reason for that is that in order to keep us safe and not get sick from drinking our water out of our taps, our municipalities use chlorine or chloramine to treat the water that comes into our homes. And so that chlorine or chloramine, each municipality uses a different one, and you can look it up on the website for your water treatment district. It'll tell you which chemical it uses. Obviously, that kills bacteria, fungus, viruses, etc. So it's important that it's in there. But if you've just gone to the trouble to create a soil blocking mix that has living mycorrhizal fungi in it, and worm castings that has beneficial bacteria and stuff, if you're going to use municipal water, you're going to kill it. And so basically you'll just have a sterile soil, or nearly so. So if you have access to rainwater, that's the best to use because obviously it hasn't been treated. But if you don't, that's okay. If your municipality uses chlorine, you're in luck, because all you have to do is fill up a bucket with your water, your tap water, leave that bucket out for 24 hours and let the chlorine will off gas, and then your water will be safe to use. But if, like mine, your municipality uses chloramine, it will not off gas from your water, your tap water. So you're kind of stuck with it. So in that case, you could use the same tablets that you use to treat water going into fish tanks, because that makes that water safe for fish with no chlorine or chloramine. So, but I would suggest if you have the chance to do rainwater, do it. And rainwater capture is legal in most places. And even if you are in a place that gets a lot of rain, I would suggest still collecting rainwater if you can, because you just never know. I'm going to use one of these trays and the 20 cell soil blocker so you can see. Basically, now we've got, it's nice and wet. Water's not streaming out of it, but it is holding together. It's holding together like you were making a mud pie. Now we're going to take our soil blocker, put it into the mix, really press it in there. You want to get it into all the cells. Okay, so it looks like that on the back. And then I just scrape off the edge so it's nice and flat. And then you'll also be able to see if there's any ones that need more. Then you just take your tray, place your blocker down, press, and there you go. Now you've got your soil blocks. That is 20 cells for you to put seeds in. You can start any seeds you want in soil blocks. They save space, and They're really easy to take care of. And because there's no plastic on the sides or no container around them, they air prune themselves, the roots do. And so when you go to transplant, you'll peel apart the block and it'll have all its roots in there, and they're just all kind of pruned along the sides from hitting the air. Now these 6-packs from Epic Gardening work similarly. That's why they have these slits in them. So these help to air prune these seedlings as well. And they have nice big holes at the bottom, so you can poke your finger up and get the whole plug out without having to really damage the seedling. So I still recommend these for smaller scale stuff. But if you want to try soil blocking, get yourself a soil blocker. They are a little expensive, but you know, made of metal, and if you take care of it and keep it rinsed and clean when you're not using it, these will last kind of forever. I've had this one for 5 years and there's not even any rust on it at this point. So worth it, but you have to kind of make changes in how you do your stuff. So once you get all your soil blocks on, something I learned from Lisa, I have this little tray. I think it's made out of aluminum. Anyway, it doesn't, it eliminates static electricity. Some of the problems with getting seeds, like if you put them in your hand or whatever, you start to develop static electricity and they all stick together. So this little tray is great because you dump them in there and they don't clump together. Then I use a toothpick, depending on the size of the seed. Most of the flower seeds are really small. I get it wet, and yes, I use my tongue, and then I just dab it, a seed sticks to it, and I pop it in the middle of that soil block. Then, depending on, this is something else you need to know when you are starting these seeds, whether it's vegetables or flowers, does the seed need light to germinate? Some seeds need light exposure to germinate, others need darkness. So once you know that, then you can either cover it with a little bit more soil if it needs darkness, or you can cover it with what I use as vermiculite, because vermiculite allows the light in, but it also acts as a bit of a kind of a mulch to hold in the soil moisture, because the thing about soil blocks is they dry out very quickly. So I'm watering every single day, and you'll know that they're dry because they will be a different color. They'll be lighter in color. And so the way we water them in these trays is I just pour water into one side and the soil blocks just soak it up. So I'm not overhead watering. If you overhead water, they will just fall apart until there's enough of a root system to hold them together. So in the beginning, you're going to be watering on the sides here, and after they soak up as much water as they're going to soak up, pour off the rest of the water. You don't want them sitting in water, you know, during the day and overnight, and because that will lead to mold growth on the top, and that's not fun. All right, so again, depending on what your seeds need, you may or may not be putting them onto a seedling heat mat or on a sunny windowsill. You just have to know what your seeds are going to need. And a good seed packet will tell you that. If it doesn't say, just Google it, find out, look up, use the word culture. So look up seed starting for straw flower in Google, and it will tell you how to do it, whether it needs light, all that kind of stuff, what temperatures it germinates at, how long it takes to germinate, because that's going to matter too. You might plant a bunch of stuff and be like, where all this germinated, but everything else, these other things didn't, they failed. No, they may take 21 to 30 days. Some seeds take a really long time. So as long as you know all that, then you'll be more successful. Okay, so my setup, because I'm growing thousands of seedlings, is probably a little different from yours, but wasn't super expensive to get started. So let me show you. Okay, so here in the greenhouse, I have these 3 baker's racks. Just got them off of Amazon. They're sturdy, metal, and you can adjust the shelf height to whatever you need, okay? This is my seed starting rack. I also have a table that I'll show you that I start seeds on. These mats are seedling heat mats. This is the 10 by 20, 0.75 inches size. I would like the bigger one on here, but it's too big for this shelf. This is the bigger mat. You see how wide it is, and it's really long. So that's why it's on this this shelf, this bench. And right now it doesn't have any seedlings on it. It's got other stuff, which I'll move, but I do like to put these trays. They fit great. I can fit, I think, 4 on here, and then I have a light as well if I need it. So when the seedlings are germinating, they're on these seedling heat mats. Pretty much I always put them on the heat mats because they will germinate a little bit faster. And you can get some with a temperature regulator like that, so that you can stick the probe, which is this, into your soil block or your 6-pack or whatever, and then tell the thing what you want it, the soil temperature to be at, and then it will adjust the mat to that temperature so that your seedling germinates at that temperature. But I don't have that on all of them. I have found that it doesn't really matter too much except when I'm starting seeds in January and February in here, when the greenhouse is 35 to 38 degrees Fahrenheit, it does matter. So I will make adjustments there. And in those cases, I also have humidity domes, and I'll also put those over the heat mat with the tray on top, not so much to hold in humidity, but to hold in the heat. And it does, it works great. So those are just little hacks that I figured out. Now, once they germinate, once 50% of the tray has germinated, then it gets moved over here to this rack, which is lit. Actually, I should turn this off because I have no seedlings on here anymore since they all died. It's janky looking, right? Because there's 2 different sizes and everything. I don't care, it works. So these are just inexpensive LED lights. They are not hot at all. You can touch them. They're a little more expensive than the T5 lights, fluorescent lights, but the old fluorescent lights put out a lot of heat, and seedlings grow best if you can keep, once they go under the lights, if you can keep the light really close to the surface of the seedling, like this, as they grow, they will not be as leggy. So if they're really far from the light source, they tend to get really tall and leggy, and that makes them weak. So as they grow, I start them out with the lights really low. These are adjustable in height. And as they grow, I just keep raising the lights. So that helps the seedlings stay, more compact, stronger stems, and greener. Adjustable lights. Now, the ones I was talking about, the old-fashioned fluorescent lights, they tend to be pretty hot, and they can actually burn your seedlings if they get too close. So you kind of have to have a bit more balance there. But these guys, you could put it practically right on top, and they wouldn't hurt the seedlings at all because there's no heat coming off of them. Now, after the seedlings have germinated, or at least 50% of the tray has germinated, and I put them under the lights, I'm still watering every day to make sure they stay hydrated. At the end of the first week, depending on how they look, like if they really put on some growth, I'm going to start fertilizing every week. The first week is going to be a mixture of water, pretty much maybe this whole can filled with water, and maybe a teaspoon of fish emulsion and kelp. Everything gets watered with that. Then the next weekend, or the next Friday, I say weekend because in order to remember to fertilize, I say fertilizer Friday, so I generally do it on Fridays. The next week, the fertilizer will be worm compost tea, and I'll mix maybe a tablespoon into that watering can. So they're not getting a ton, they're getting a little bit. You don't want to over-fertilize them, because what that might do is either stunt their growth because it'll be too much for them to take in, or worse, it'll grow algae on top of your soil blocks, and you just don't want that. And then basically they get that until they go out into the field, and then they'll be just getting the same treatment once a week, alternating between the fish emulsion and the worm compost tea through a backpack sprayer, so it'd be foliar feed. And that's what I do. So, a couple things. Pests. Now, the first year that I grew in the greenhouse, I had no pest problems at all. Like, it was wonderful. But the second year, the mice found me. And what they do is they come in at night, and I know this because I have a camera in here and I've seen them. They come in and they run across the surface of the soil blocks and they eat the seedlings. And you can tell it's mice even if you didn't have a camera because the soil blocks are all flattened, right? And insects wouldn't do that because they don't weigh enough. So the mice come in and they eat the seedlings down to nothing. In order to fight that, I've got these domes, humidity domes. And at night I come in and I cover every tray with a humidity dome just to keep the mice off of them. And that works great. I also set mice traps in here. So far, because there hasn't been anything growing in here all summer, I'm not having an issue, but as soon as I start growing things, they'll come back. Gnats, fungus gnats. Those are always a problem, kind of no matter where you grow, and I need to replace them, so I'll show you this one before I toss it. I just get these fungus gnat strips. It's sticky, very sticky on both sides. I'm trying not to touch it. And you just hang them on the rack above your seedlings, or even they have some that are super cute. I don't have any with me right now. They look like little butterflies, and you can actually, they have a little stake on them. You can actually put those in a pot with your plants or whatever. So I just keep these around. That takes care of the fungus gnats. Now, if you're going to be growing like I am over the winter, I usually start the second round of seeds in like January, February, and it's very, very cold out here. I do have a little space heater that, it's real tiny, it's only about this big, that can heat this whole greenhouse, and I close all the vents so that, I mean, not all the vents, there's airflow, but I close the windows basically. There's screened windows here, so I close those to keep the heat in, and that keeps it perfect in here. The daytime temperatures usually aren't an issue. It's the nighttime temperatures. And with seedlings, even though these are cold hardy annuals, they still need, you know, to be warm enough at night. So if once they're in the field, if I see that we're going to get, you know, a hard frost, I will go out and cover them with those metal hoops you saw me using the other day in the front garden, and row cover. And that basically just keeps them, the row cover that I've got, I can't remember what it's rated at, it gives about 5 extra degrees of warmth from whatever the surrounding temperature is. Now you can even double those to get even more warmth for your seedlings. So if you're living in a much colder place, you can, once you transplant them, you can cover them with multiple layers. Some people even, like I know people in northern New York in like zone 4 who grow in a high tunnel, but they still cover with 2 layers of row cloth because it still gets too cold in that high tunnel for everything to stay alive. So, you know, there's lots of ways to season extend and protect your transplants and your seedlings. And we're in that shoulder season right now. So for some of you, it's getting cold. For us, we're still pretty warm. And I'm hoping the temperatures stay where they're at right now, which is beautiful because these seedlings then will do great. And I hope we don't have any more heat waves. All right, so that was a very long-winded video. I hope that I've answered your questions. If I haven't, please drop them in the comments below. I'm gonna put on my seed starting hat and sit here and really focus and get all this done as much as I can. And then we have some really fun stuff coming up the rest of the week. I've got a whole bunch of new irises that I want to show you that are going to go in the cottage garden. And we've got flowers to plant as well, containers to plant up. And then of course, we're going to start doing the bed flipping at the farm, which means cutting everything down from summer, rolling up all the netting, rolling up all the landscape fabric and the irrigation, bringing in truckloads of compost, remaking those beds, getting them all set for the new transplants, and then putting some of the beds to sleep for the winter under a silage tarp. So lots coming up, lots of work to do. I hope you'll join us. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And I hope you have a wonderful time in your garden, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.